Hey there, Eric here again. Today we're going to be doing a walk cycle. First thing we're going to do is establish a ground plane. We're going to keep this a pretty basic cycle. We're going to keep it about 3 or 4 poses within the cycle. Okay, we've gotten our ground plane and I've kind of sped up this video. I didn't want it to take too long. I also want to apologize. It's taking me a while to upload anything. I've actually recorded this 3 times and this one did not have audio whenever I recorded, so I'm having to re-record audio. We're going to start off with a contact pose. So the contact pose is where the foot is going to make contact with the ground. So here's Norman again as I draw him out. He's got the basic circle head and kind of a bean-shaped body. This leg that I'm drawing here is actually the contact that's happening in the front. And in the back, the foot is going to be kind of peeling back. One important thing whenever you're drawing this is to kind of establish a little bit of depth between the character. And one way to achieve that is to draw the foot furthest away from the camera slightly higher than the one facing towards the camera. That way you've got that distance between the 2 feet. So here the arms kind of work in opposing manners. You go ahead and draw in the eye, the nose, and kind of finish out Norman here. So this is your basic contact pose. And we're just going to go ahead and shade in some of those back layers and clean up our drawing here. And then we're going to do contact 2. So the way that I learned from A and B and from other animators, but mostly A and B, he's one of my mentors, we're going to basically do both contact poses at the same time. So to keep it really simple, like I said, it's the basic walk cycle. We're going to reuse the body here, and then we're going to basically flip the arms. So that arm that was facing the camera, that was forward, is now going to be back, and so on. So we're flipping the 2. Keep that the objects in the back shaded, and there you saw I was kind of making a guide so I can keep the foot on the same plane. The last thing you want to do is lift up the feet or have them kind of vary in the height of where they're making contact with the ground. It'll make the foot look like it's sliding around. So here you can see I'm kind of flipping back and forth between the 2 poses as the arm and legs kind of swap positions. But the main thing is that on contact 1 and contact 2, both feet are making contact with the ground. The next thing we're going to do is the passing pose. That's where the leg is going to pass through the middle. And essentially, Norman is going to be shifting the weight as Norman is kind of rising up, stabilizing, and then switching to the other foot. So I'm making a little bit of height differential. This is going to be the tallest that Norman gets in the walk cycle. And then as you kind of move your character, you want to make sure everything, for the most part, is kind of moving in a similar pattern and distance. So you can see the difference in the shoulder and in the bottom of kind of the butt area and to where the head shifted. They're all kind of matching. And then the foot there is going to be really stable in the middle. Everything in the with the passing pose is going to start to align towards the middle because that's where the foot is coming up. The knee is driving forward and passing that other leg that's on the ground. And so that's why we get a little bit of verticality there. And that's also why Norman's going to be the tallest there, because that leg is directly under Norman while Norman's walking. And you can also see the alignment of the shoulder there is pretty much dead center. But as I animate the arm backwards, that bicep is going to be pretty dead center in the middle, but we're going to drag the forearm and the hand. And you can see that arc that I've kind of created there as a guide to see the motion. And now I'm going to do my next passing pose. It's going to be very similar to how we did the contact pose. We're essentially going to rehash the head and the body and keep those pretty similar to where they are. And then we're just going to flip the legs in terms of the positioning. So the one leg that was facing the camera, that was up, and the knee driving forward, that's going to flip. That leg now is going to be on the ground with the knee in the back driving forward. And so the pose is going to be really similar. Make sure you drag the arms, and you can see on this particular drawing that the shoulder is in the center of the body, and that arm facing the camera is kind of dragging a little bit. And again, you can see the alignment of that leg facing the camera and how that back leg is, that knee is driving forward, and you're having a little bit of drag in the foot. Okay, so when you have the contact and the passing poses, those are your like two bread and butter poses that develop a walk cycle. If this were a really like low bit game, you can kind of get away with that. But the next thing that we're going to make now is the down pose. And so here's down one. And what's happening is the character Norman here is making contact with the floor. And so Norman's weight is going to come down now, hence the down pose. So when that weight comes down, Norman's going to bend the knee. And so the first thing I want to do is really establish where that foot lands. And I like to work in pieces. I don't always work from like one unit and then draw out the rest of the character. I like to kind of establish certain elements of the character as they're moving. So I'm always flipping to see, and here you can see the body isn't quite right. The bottom of the stomach needs to kind of come down where the butt is. But I think I make that adjustment a little bit later. And when you come down, the hand just kind of pokes out, and you can see I'm really focusing on my arc between the two poses. It's not quite an in-between. And I'm maintaining that drag as the character is getting ready to move into the next key pose. And it's really important to flip. Here you can see I'm kind of erasing that butt area and dropping it down. You want to see that spacing with the character as they're moving. And if that hip and that like butt area isn't coming down, then the down pose isn't going to feel like Norman is putting pressure on that foot and the weight is coming towards the ground. So it's really important to see where, like how the body mechanics are going, how the weight is shifting, and seeing that distance that the body, the head, and all of these things travel is incredibly important. And here you can see as I'm flipping through, I'm seeing that bounce, and I'm seeing a nice distance and arc within the animation. So now we're going to establish our second down pose. Again, we're keeping this basic, so you can essentially use the meat of each pose. And to me, that's like where the head is, where the body is. So there's a little bit easier. I knew where my body was, where my head was, so I can just kind of rehash that pose. Now I'm kind of looking, here I'm talking about the reverse curve. So working with the curvature of the spine. So here when Norman is tall, you can see the shoulders are back and you've got like this curve of the spine. But when Norman comes down, we're curving that spine forwards so that as Norman comes back up and you see that reverse curve of the spine, you're getting some really nice action coming through. So here I'm just establishing the foot. When the character makes contact and then comes down, you really want to feel where that heel is of the contact. The foot is landing right there. You don't want any type of slippage or sliding. So it's really important to establish that. And here again, I'm keeping a nice arc and a nice bounce. You can see that that arm is coming down a little bit and then pops back up. And you can really see how we're favoring the arm towards the back and towards the front. And we're not necessarily like evenly spacing out all of these positions of Norman. It's nice to kind of favor one particular spot and then have a quick breakdown. Similar to the pendulum, when something is swinging, in that middle portion, it's going to go by fast, but then as the pendulum swings to each side, you're going to have kind of an ease in and an ease out. So you're going to see more of those elements at the most extreme ends of the left or the right side, and then go quickly through the middle. So the last, we've done our, so we've done contact, we did pass, we did down. Now we have 1/4 drawing, that's the up pose. And that's kind of an in-between from the passing pose to the next contact pose. And so this will complete a 4 drawing per side walk cycle. It's 8 drawings altogether. But it's literally just a straight in between. So you can see now I'm finding my arcs. I'm doing a little bit of eyesight and looking at how I'm going to develop this. But with this up pose, the main thing that's happening is that foot is getting ready to strike and make contact. So if you think of like a snake coiling and then striking, that's sort of what's happening here. So that knee drives forward, it gets in place. You have the energy coming from the hip and the knee, and then it's going to strike down. And then with that energy coming down, that's what's going to create that down pose following the contact. And it's really important to flip through and watch that action. And again, keep your drawings and shapes pretty basic as you get through this, because really we just want to get through this tutorial and see how far you go. Try and get all of these drawings done. And if you follow along, I really do think you're going to have a really nice result. And from there, you can add nuances, you can add shift and weight, you can add characteristics to the walk cycle. But in my mind, these are the 4 basic drawings that really develop a walk cycle. All right, so as I'm flipping through, you'll see the up pose. So that knee comes up, the foot is really curling now. And it's literally just a straight in between. So what I'm doing now is I'm copying the first pose, the first contact, and I'm going all the way to the end, and I pasted it so that I can do an in-between from our last passing pose to the first contact pose. So again, we took the very first drawing and copied and pasted it at the very end. That way we can have our onion skin of the last frame and the frame that's going to loop back to. That way we can do the in-between. I'm watching where the knee's really going to arc and push forward. And it's really nice to exaggerate how high that leg comes up. Make sure it still feels like it's part of Norman's body and things are flowing well. Here I'm just establishing my in-between for that foot facing the camera as that foot is kind of peeling back. And then just continue to keep flipping as you draw these out. And really that's how you want to animate. You don't necessarily need the onion skin on to do these things. It's definitely helpful, especially when you're doing something like an in-between. But don't forget to flip through and really pay attention to the arcs and the motion and just the general construction of the character as you're going through. Okay, so I'm just wrapping up this in-between here. Flipping through. Yep, that's looking pretty good. You can really see that action happening. Let me zoom out here a little bit. And then when you're done, you want to delete that last frame because it's looping back to frame 1 here. So it goes contact, down, pass, up. Contact, down, pass, up. You have those 4 poses repeated twice once per side. So there you can see my 4 drawings. I'm going to select them all. I'm going to hold the edge of one, put finger on the other side of the screen and drag those out. And I'm going to drag them out into 4s so that each drawing is lasting 4 frames long. All right, looking pretty good. Now I'm going to zoom in and kind of fill that frame, and then here's my walk cycle. Now granted, when we're watching this is sped up x2. So if we can get through a little bit quicker, since most of my videos were coming through about 35 minutes, I wanted this one to land closer to 15 to help you get through. But there you have it. You got a really basic walk cycle. Looks really nice. And I think once you get through this, you'll really see the mechanics come through and have a really nice result as you work through that walk cycle. Thanks again for checking it out. This is Eric here. Last thing we're going to do, this was just for fun as I want to explore. I grouped and then duplicated and then grouped again because I wanted to see Norman kind of slide across the screen a little bit. So I'm going to do a keyframe here and kind of find where Norman might end up and throw a keyframe on the beginning. And so the thought that I have here is I'm just going to drag Norman from left to right and find the right distance that Norman's going to travel so that it feels kind of nice as Norman walks. Now you'll notice Norman gets, he has easing built in. So what I found here is that Procreate Dreams is automatically setting an ease in and out, and what I'm doing is switching to linear. So I drilled into that keyframe and I changed the easing so that it's linear, because when Norman's walking at this constant pace, what you want is a constant left to right movement. You don't really want any type of easing in the actual distance traveled and speed that Norman is going. But what I do want to adjust is the location of how Norman's walking. It felt like he was kind of drifting a little bit, so I just made an adjustment there. I'm going to extend the ground plane, and then there you have it. There's Norman walking from left to right. Yeah, thanks again for watching. This is Eric, and I hope you really appreciated this tutorial, and subscribe and tune in for future lessons.